You know, Gerald, with 20 million vacant homes and millions more facing foreclosure in the next 2 years or so, it seems like buying a house is tantamount to catching a falling knife. I'd like your thoughts on buying versus renting a home.
Well, it depends on what your position in life is. You know, if you could afford it, of course, you know, you want to buy it, and it's a great place where you think it's going to be a good investment value because of its, you know, historic nature or great location. You know, of course, you know, life is short, and if you could afford it, great. But if you're just starting out, you don't need a house. Why buy now? It's not going to get better. It's only getting worse. And that's after they've dumped how many trillions into this? And who owns all of these mortgages? You and I and everybody listening. Backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA. So it's the whole thing is a scam from top to bottom. I love it, Chris. You cannot make this stuff up. Look at the news in the last few days. We hear that Freddie Mac says it needs $1.8 billion from taxpayers. So please make your checks payable to DC Giant Fraud Fund and Big Banks, Inc., because they want your money.
Those GSEs, they were not quite a successful collaboration with the government. We look at the stock prices of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I know they've been delisted now, but that swan dive from $60, $70, $80 a share down to 60 or 70 cents was something. And I think it just goes to show that we need more of a laissez-faire policy as far as having the government and business together. It just doesn't jibe.
Well, it's called fascism, the merger of state and corporate powers. And what we need is the end of the criminal games. I mean, that's why the stock went to where it was and what it was. It's a criminal game. You've heard me say this over and over again, and I know I go on the blogs and people are tired of hearing me say it. Oh, there goes Celente again. The criminals are in charge of Wall Street, but you're not allowed to call them the white shoe boys, crooks, and criminals. They're high financiers. They're the Goldman Sachs gangs and the Merrill Lynch mob and the J.P. Morgan Chase crooks. That's all it is. The whole thing is a criminal enterprise, and as you well said, it's the merger of state and corporate powers. Yeah, this isn't capitalism, folks. Capitalism, you rise and fall on your own merits. You don't get bailed out because your buddies are running the government.
I wanted to move on, if we could, to the unemployment situation, Gerald. With 9.5% unemployment rate, many are asking just where all these jobs to pull us out of the recession are going to come from. Plus, we're now facing a world where millions of domestic positions have been shipped offshore and are performed for pennies on the dollar. Unless the government plans to employ all of us, I just don't see a simple solution here.
Well, you said it. Where are the jobs? And the jobs are overseas. That's where they are. They sold us out. And that's as simple as that. It began with Reagan and escalated under Clinton. And it went into high gear with Clinton, and Bush kept it going. They sold us out. As I said, they turned us into a nation of clerks and cashiers and shelf stockers. We're not going to have the jobs. And let's go to the 9.5. That you just mentioned. It's not 9.5. Again, only in a corrupt system could they make up such a scam that once you're off the unemployment rolls, you're no longer unemployed. Because when you start really adding up the numbers, you're looking at about 22% when you add in the people that are underemployed, looking for jobs, can't find any, working part-time and wish they had full-time. It's only going to get worse. There is no recovery. And after this, Chris, mark my words, they're going to take us to war. One way or another.
Although stocks posted a spectacular rebound rally, many think that the quantitative easing is now behind us. Plus, equities are hardly cheap when we measure them from these high PE levels. Even if the economy remains more robust than we expect, from a fundamental perspective, it seems to be difficult to make a solid case to own stocks here.
I think anybody that buys stocks and loses deserves what they get. I've made this very clear. Matter of fact, it's in our Summer Trends journal, the whole thing about gambling. That's all it is. You're gambling, and you're gambling on somebody else. I'll tell you what I do, and I've said this, it's public knowledge. I have most of my assets. I have to, unfortunately, I have to put money in IRAs, so I only could buy ETFs with gold. And so I have gold ETFs, and the rest of my money is in dollars, Swiss francs, and Canadian dollars. All I want in that game is to end up even. Wealth preservation. One goes up, the other goes down. I'm not interested in gambling my money for 3.5% tax-free. So the other issue is about gold. And I believe, and I've said that, that I'd rather not have the ETFs. I'd rather buy for possession. And I do. So people that buy stocks, and the point that I'm making, Chris, is that with the extra money that we have, we invest in ourselves. And that's what everyone should be doing with that money. They should be investing in themselves, their families, and, yes, their friends that they believe in.
I listened to a survivalist once talk about dental care. Many of us let that slide because, goodness, we've lost a job, we're facing foreclosure, times are tough, and we let our dental care slide.
Oh, exactly. It's what I said about, earlier on. Being in shape physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Listen, I've had my ups and downs in life. I remember one time when, I had to get an implant, and the whole thing was going to cost a couple of $1,000, and I didn't know if I could pay for it. So here's another trend that's happening. It's called medical tourism. People are going offshore to get medical help, and they're going to countries like India and Thailand and Costa Rica and Mexico. They're going to other places for affordable health care. Look, we all know the same story. When your health is on the line, you'll do anything to stay healthy. And yes, dental will be look, one of the biggest fields to continue to stay in is health care. We're an aging population, very unhealthy, and as I keep saying over and over again, the best way for me is alternative or complementary healing. When it's a crisis situation, yeah, go for the Western medicine. You need those antibiotics. You get in a serious whatever it might be, go the Western route. But for long-term healing, there's only one way to do it, in my book, and that's complementary medicine.
And as we wrap up here, Gerald, you may have heard of the new legislation to require $10.99 for every bullion transaction over $600. This is Section 9006 of the health care bill. It's being kind of slipped in there under the table. Some folks are saying this is even worse than the FDR gold confiscation plan. The Massive Healthcare Reform Act has this provision here, and it regards the sale of almost everything, but particularly bullion. Many dealers are very upset. A lot of individuals have contacted me. People have called in. Now, we've got about a year. I believe it goes into effect in January 2012. Have you heard of this, and do you have any thoughts on it?
I've heard of it, absolutely, and I do have thoughts on it. This is the first stage, as we see it, that's going to lead to their attempts to confiscate gold. So they have records of everybody. And it's also another way to shake down everybody. It's squeeze the little people, whether it's squeezing that little kid selling lemonade in Portland, Oregon. You heard about that story. They busted her little lemonade stand because they want to protect our health, and they're doing the same thing here. So they're going to keep robbing the little people, getting every penny that they can, and everyone knows that is into gold that, to me, it's the only commodity that I can trust. And when the world knows that, you're going to start seeing the paper currencies collapse. And this is their way of pulling another Federal Emergency Banking Act.
Congressman Dan Lundgren has introduced that H.R. 5141, so hopefully that will garner the support it needs to repeal that 1099 requirement. But we'll have to watch this very closely. Gerald, I'm sure many listeners would like to find out more about your Trends Journal as well as your website.
They could go to trendsjournal.com. That's trendsjournal.com. And also, Chris, we know that people are having a difficult time, so we have a discount request page there. And just fill out the form. We try to make the Trends Journal available to everyone because we want people to be prepared and be part of the 20% solution. The people that care enough about this country that want to turn it around. And that's what the Trends Journal is. It prepares you for the future so you don't go down with this ship, and you could avoid the pitfalls and gain the opportunities that are present.
Okay, Gerald. Well, as always, I want to thank you for joining me on the broadcast, and have yourself a profitable week ahead.
Okay, thank you.